Hello and welcome to yourbookmybook.com. Today's podcast is sponsored by One Trip to Paradise. Today we have the honor to talk to Patti Liszkay, author of Equal and Opposite Reaction. Thank you for coming to yourbookmybook.com, Patti.
Oh, well, thank you, Miguel. Honor's mine.
So Patti, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm originally from Philadelphia, but I've been living here in Columbus, Ohio for many moons now. And even though I consider myself a writer first and foremost, the fact is, if I had to depend strictly upon my writing income, I'd be pretty skinny. So I also teach piano lessons. That's what I do to earn my bread. And I've been writing and teaching piano for quite a few years now.
So will you say piano teaching ever influences your writing?
Oh, I think it probably does. I mean, at least peripherally. My stories do tend to have children as their characters. For example, in Equal and Opposite Reaction, there are several young characters, ages 6, 7, 9, 11, and a new baby, which is, about the average age of my piano students. Well, not the new baby, of course, although I do specialize in teaching very young children piano. I've taught children as young as 3 using the Suzuki method. So I do have, quite a bit of experience working with young children. So, when I was formulating these young characters from my novel, I would visualize my students of that age, and I'd think about, what do they say? How do they talk? How do they act? And so I guess, in that sense, there is that kind of crossover. And well, I guess then you can see my book here. I seem to have a black and white thing going on. I think that maybe came from, subconsciously looking at piano keys all day long.
So Equal and Opposite Reaction is your first novel, correct?
Well, yes, it is my first novel. I started out writing short stories for magazines. Well, back when more magazines used to publish short stories. I've also, I've written plays. I had a play locally produced. It was a comedy called The Cosmic Oi. I co-wrote a musical comedy, a Western called The Town of Hard Times, and it told the story of this group of mail-order brides who became unclaimed parcels and then were eventually delivered to the wrong town. Anyway, I'm sorry to say that our musical never quite made it to Broadway, but it did have a pretty good run in my living room and in the living rooms of some of my friends.
Really?
Yeah. Well, there was me, and there was some of my musical colleagues, and some of my friends even rustled up some of their friends from the high school drama department. And so that was that. But anyway, now I've taken my first fling at a novel.
Tell us a little bit about your novel.
Oh, well, it's a comedy. I guess I seem to be hardwired to write comedy, but it's a romantic comedy of errors, lots and lots of errors, called Equal and Opposite Reactions. It's published by Black Rose Writing, and it's set in working class Northeast Philadelphia, where I grew up and probably knew most of the characters, including the plumber. And it's told in the voices, that I heard when I was growing up. And anyway, it tells the story of this young, struggling, financially and emotionally struggling, newly divorced mother, and this broken-hearted plumber who comes to fix her broken toilet, who learn to their shock that they have something strangely in common. And this discovery sort of leads them down this rabbit hole where they meet this constellation of characters from around the Philadelphia area. For example, there's this shady South Philadelphia salvage yard operator. There's this kind of sneaky, snaky, unethical condo owner. Oh, and there's this family of a young family of undocumented Nicaraguan immigrants who become sort of central to the story, along with the African-American lawyer who becomes their advocate. And, it also tells the story of, divorce, the anger, the hurt, the pain, and the healing as well, and also the struggles of blended families.
It sounds like some timely immigration issues. It sounds like.
Well, yeah, I'd say there's some timely immigration issues. I mean, you've got these two characters who are struggling to follow their hearts and their consciences while they deal with this, all these ethical dilemmas that are sort of swirling around them since they befriended this young undocumented couple who really are just struggling themselves to try to make a better life for their child, their American-born child, just to complicate things a little bit.
So where did your inspiration for this long book come from?
Oh, well, I guess maybe, an idea, a flight of imagination, where all stories originally start. But this story started out as a short story that I wrote for First for Women, again, back when First for Women used to publish short stories. And it was a story called He Looked Nothing Like Prince Charming. And the story was, pretty well received. People would say, oh, it made me laugh, it made me cry, but what happens next? And I didn't know what happened next to me. It was just a short story that I'd written. But I got to thinking, what would have happened next and also what would have happened before. So I expanded He Looks Nothing Like Prince Charming, from both ends. And I wrote it into a play because at that time I was in my playwriting phase. So I wrote it into a play called Equal and Opposite Reactions, which I sent to many producers, all of whom rejected it. But sometimes they put a note like, oh, loved the characters, loved the story, good luck finding a producer. But one guy wrote, this is a really good story, but you've got too many children and you've got too many set changes, so it would really be hard to stage. And I think for me that was kind of a bingo moment, because I realized this is meant to be a novel. So anyway, it's been kind of a long Ulyssean odyssey from the idea to the novel.
So what's next for you?
Well, believe it or not, a sequel to Equal and Opposite Reactions. Not because I was intending to write a sequel, but again, everybody keeps asking me, well, what happens next? Which kind of surprises me because I've got this big, long, 113,256 word book that was full of all these characters, and all, this big, long story and all this Philadelphia flavor. And, I just kept, with all these characters, I just kept making up all these problems for them. I would make up a lot of problems before I could even figure out what the solutions would be. But eventually I figured out all the solutions and I resolved all the issues. I mean, I thought I did, but apparently my readers don't feel that that's the case. I think what really happened is everybody just got so invested in all these characters. Some they love, some they love to hate. And I think they just want to know what's going to happen next. So I've given it some thought and I have a rough idea, of how it's going to go. So everybody hang in there. The sequel's on the way, but you still have plenty of time to read Equal and Opposite Reactions.
So how can our audience around the world connect with you?
Oh, well, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I have a daily blog called Ailantha. That's AILANTHA that, you could follow if you'd like.
How can your book become my book?
Oh, well, it's available at Amazon. It's available at barnesandnoble.com. You can buy it from my publisher, Black Rose Writing. If you live in the Columbus area, it's available at Gramercy Books in Bexley. It's available at the Book Loft of German Village, and they tell me that in a couple weeks it's going to be on the shelves of the Bexley Public Library. So,
wow, that's pretty nice.
Oh, thank you.
Just wanted to make an announcement. You know about the Book Loft of German Village, correct?
Oh, sure.
We usually have an event there every year, okay. And I would like to invite you next year.
Oh. Super.
Well, Patti, thank you for coming and stopping by today. We truly appreciate it. And thank you for One Trip to Paradise for sponsoring this podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us today. Everybody have a great day. Thank you, Patti.
Oh, pleasure's mine.